The red warning lights blinked across the bridge of the EBS Crimson Dawn. Admiral Robert Hayes walked slowly between the control stations, his boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. The ship's crew worked quietly, each person focused on their screens and controls. "Sir, another message from Earth Defense Command," said Linda Roberts, the young communications officer. Her voice shook slightly as she spoke. Hayes nodded and pressed a button on the main screen. The message was clear and direct. 3 human colony worlds, New Eden, Terra Nova, and Paradise Point, had been attacked. The aliens called themselves the Elder Races Coalition, a group of species that had lived among the stars for millions of years. "Play the alien transmission again," Hayes ordered, wanting to hear their words one more time. The alien leader appeared on the main screen. It looked almost like a tall human, but had blue skin and silver eyes. Its voice was deep and smooth. "To the leaders of Earth and its colonies, we have existed for millions of your years. We have watched hundreds of young species rise and fall. Your kind spreads too quickly, develops technology too fast. You must be contained. This attack is your first and only warning. Stay within your current borders, or we will destroy more of your worlds." Hayes turned to face his crew. 20 years in the Earth Space Force had taught him how to hide his anger, but inside, he was burning with rage. "They think we're just children," he said quietly. "They believe we're weak because we're young." Behind him, Chief Engineer Lisa Parker spoke up. "Should I start warming up the harvesters, sir?" Her hands were already moving over her control panel, entering commands. "Yes," Hayes said. "Power up all systems. It's time to show them what humanity can really do." The quantum harvesters were humanity's greatest secret. When Earth had nearly run out of energy 50 years ago, scientists had found a way to turn living matter into pure energy. It was a terrible discovery, one that had shocked even its creators. But humanity had kept the technology, hidden it away, hoping they would never need to use it. Now, deep inside the Crimson Dawn, massive machines hummed to life. Red lights glowed in long, dark chambers as the harvest systems powered up. The ship itself seemed to pulse with dark energy. "Status report," Hayes called out. "All weapons systems are ready," said John Miller from the weapons station. "Standard missiles and energy cannons at full power." "Engineering reports all harvesters are online," Lisa added. "The containment fields are stable." "Navigation standing by," said Paul Cooper, his hands steady on the controls. "Jump drives are charged and ready." Hayes walked to the front of the bridge and looked out at the stars. Behind the Crimson Dawn, 50 more ships of the Blood Harvest fleet moved into formation. Each one carried the same terrible technology, each one ready to show the elder races their mistake. "Send a message to all ships," Hayes ordered. "Tell them to prepare for quantum jump. Our target is the elder race's main fleet base in the Centauri sector." Linda's fingers moved quickly over her console. "Message sent, sir. All ships report ready." Hayes thought about the colony worlds that had been attacked. Thousands of humans had died because some ancient aliens thought they knew better. Because they saw humans as children who needed to be controlled. "They want to teach us a lesson," Hayes said to his crew. "But they forgot something important. The young can be more dangerous than the old. We had to fight for everything we have. We had to survive on a world that tried to kill us every day. And we learned something they never did. Sometimes survival means doing terrible things." The fleet's engines glowed brighter, preparing for the jump to faster than light speed. On every ship, the harvest chambers pulsed with red light, ready to turn living matter into pure energy. "All ships, prepare for jump," Hayes ordered. "Today we show the elder races what humanity does to protect its own. Today they learn why our ships are called the Blood Harvest Fleet." Space bent around the ships as they jumped into quantum space. They were heading to war, carrying weapons that would make ancient species tremble with fear. The elder races thought they were teaching humanity a lesson. They were about to learn one instead. Soon, The galaxy would know why you should never threaten a species that turned its own desperate need for survival into a weapon. Lisa Parker stood in the massive harvest chamber of the EBS Crimson Dawn, checking the final readings on her tablet. The room stretched nearly 100 meters long, filled with rows of giant silver machines. Red energy pulsed through clear tubes that ran between them, looking almost like blood flowing through veins. How are the calibrations coming along? Steve Roberts, her assistant engineer, called from the upper walkway. He was running checks on the cooling systems that kept the harvesters from overheating. Almost done, Lisa replied, moving to the next harvester. She tried not to think too hard about what these machines could do. She had helped design them, had spent 10 years working on the technology. But knowing what they were about to use them for made her hands shake slightly as she worked. The intercom crackled. Engineering, this is the bridge. Status report. Lisa pressed the comm button on her tablet. Chief Engineer Parker here. The harvesters are at 98% efficiency. Give us 10 more minutes to finish the final calibrations. Understood, Admiral Hayes replied. Work fast. We've just received another transmission from the Elder Races. Lisa nodded to Steve, and they moved faster. Around them, other engineers checked and double-checked every system. The harvest chambers were the heart of the ship, more important than even the main engines. If something went wrong here, the results would be catastrophic. On the bridge, Admiral Hayes watched the alien transmission again. The Elder Race ambassador, tall and blue-skinned, looked even more arrogant than before. Your silence is taken as defiance, the alien said. We have existed for millions of years. We have seen countless young species destroy themselves with technology they weren't ready for. Your ships gather near our space, but they do not concern us. What can children do against those who have mastered the stars? Hayes turned off the transmission. They're scanning us right now, he said to his bridge crew. What are they seeing? John Miller checked his tactical display. Their scans show our standard weapons, missiles, energy cannons, shield systems. Nothing that would worry them. The harvest chambers are hidden behind quantum shielding. They can't detect them. Good, Hayes nodded. Let them think we're harmless. Let them think we're children playing with toys. The ship's internal communications buzzed again. Engineering to bridge. Harvest systems are fully calibrated and ready. Hayes pressed a button on his chair. Put it on main screen. I want everyone to see this. The main screen showed the inside of the harvest chamber. Lisa Parker stood next to one of the massive machines, her face serious as she began the final test. Starting test sequence, she announced. Powering up Harvester 1. The machine hummed to life. Red energy swirled inside its clear chambers. On the testing platform in front of it, a piece of raw meat, beef from Earth, sat waiting. Activating containment field, Lisa said. A shimmer of energy surrounded the meat, beginning harvest sequence. The red energy reached out like tentacles. When it touched the meat, something incredible happened. The organic matter began to break down, not into ash or dust, but into pure energy. The harvester's storage tanks began to fill with glowing red power. Test successful, Lisa reported. Energy conversion rate at 99.8%. All systems working perfectly. Hayes looked at his crew. Some looked amazed. Others looked scared. They all understood what this meant. When these harvesters were used on living things, on the bioorganic ships of the Elder Races, the power they would generate would be enormous. Send a message to the fleet, Hayes ordered. All ships are to complete their harvest system checks within the hour. After that, we move. He stood and walked to the front of the bridge, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Elder Races waited, believing themselves safe in their ancient power. They had no idea what humanity had created in its desperate search for survival. They think we're children, Hayes said quietly. They think our youth makes us weak. They forget that children can be cruel in ways that adults have forgotten. They forget that necessity breeds terrible innovations. The harvest chambers pulsed with red light throughout the ship, ready to show the galaxy why humanity was not to be underestimated, ready to teach the elder races the true meaning of terror. Soon, very soon, the aliens would learn why Earth's ships were called the Blood Harvest Fleet, and their screams would echo across the stars. Commander David Wilson stood at his tactical station on the bridge of the EBS Crimson Dawn, watching as the fleet emerged from quantum space. The view in front of them took his breath away. The Elder Race's main military base was built into a massive asteroid field, with ships that looked like crystal sculptures floating between the rocks. All ships report successful jump. Linda Roberts announced from communications. "We've caught them by surprise, sir. Their defense systems aren't even powered up yet." Admiral Hayes nodded slowly. "Put their base on the main screen. Maximum zoom." The screen showed the alien station in detail. It was beautiful, built from some kind of living crystal that seemed to grow out of the asteroids themselves. Lights pulsed through it like heartbeats. Hundreds of ships moved around it, each one a masterpiece of bioorganic technology. "Such beauty," Hayes said quietly. "And such arrogance. They built everything out of living material because they thought no one could ever turn it against them." He turned to face his crew. "Begin the harvest." David's hands moved over his tactical controls. Targeting systems locked on their main docking areas. Those have the highest concentration of bioorganic material. Engineering reports harvest systems at full power. Lisa Parker's voice came through the comm. "Fields are ready for deployment." The elder races finally noticed something was wrong. Their ships began to move, turning to face the human fleet. A transmission came through. "Unknown vessels," a calm alien voice said. "You have entered restricted space. Leave immediately or—" Hayes cut off the transmission. "Deploy harvest fields. Target their closest ships first. Let them see what's coming." David pressed the command sequence. From the Crimson Dawn and 50 other human ships, red energy fields stretched out into space like giant webs. They moved slowly, almost gently. "They're powering up weapons," David reported, watching his screens. "Their energy readings are massive. Those ships are more powerful than anything we've ever seen." "It doesn't matter," Hayes said. "Their power will become our power. That's the beauty of the harvesters." The first red field touched an alien ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the screaming began. The alien ship's living crystal structure started to glow. Energy poured out of it, sucked into the harvest field. The beautiful vessel began to crumble, its very substance being converted into pure power. The screams came from the ship itself, the living material crying out as it died. "Energy storage at 20% and climbing fast," Lisa reported from engineering. "One ship is giving us more power than 1,000 test animals." More harvest fields reached more ships. The elder races finally understood they were under attack. Their vessels tried to flee, but the humans had positioned themselves carefully. There was nowhere to run. "They're sending out distress calls," Linda said from communications. "Should I block them?" "No," Hayes replied. "Let them call for help. Let the whole galaxy watch what happens here." David watched his tactical screen as ship after ship was caught in the harvest fields. The energy readings were off the charts. The elder races tried to fight back, firing weapons that could have destroyed Earth's fleet 10 times over. But the harvest fields absorbed the energy of their weapons too, making the humans stronger with every shot. "Sir," David said, "their main station is powering up some kind of super weapon. Energy readings are beyond anything we've seen." Hayes smiled grimly. "Perfect. Let them use it. The bigger the weapon, the more power we'll harvest from it." The alien station fired. A beam of pure white energy shot out, bright enough to blind anyone looking directly at it. It hit the harvest fields and vanished, absorbed like everything else. In the storage tanks below, power levels rose even higher. "Harvest fields at maximum spread," David reported. "No ship can escape now." They all watched as the elder race's mighty fleet was torn apart, converted into energy that filled the human ship's storage tanks. The beautiful crystal station began to crack as harvest fields reached it. This was humanity's answer to those who thought them weak. This was the price of underestimating Earth. As David watched the destruction, he remembered what his father once told him. The most dangerous creature isn't the biggest or the strongest. It's the one that has nothing left to lose. Today, the elder races learned that lesson. Today, they learned why Earth named its ships the Blood Harvest Fleet. And their screams echoed across the stars. Susan Chen stood at her science station on the bridge of the EBS Crimson Dawn, watching streams of data flow across her screens. As the fleet's chief xenobiologist, her job was to monitor how different alien materials reacted to the harvest process. What she saw both amazed and terrified her. "Admiral," she called out, "these readings are incredible. The elder races built their ships using living crystal that's actually grown from modified alien coral. Each ship is technically alive." Admiral Hayes walked over to her station. "And that makes them perfect targets for our harvesters, doesn't it?" Susan nodded, pointing to a graph on her screen. "The more complex the living material, the more energy we get. These ships aren't just alive. They're as complex as entire coral reefs. The energy yield is beyond anything we saw in testing." Around them, the bridge crew worked at their stations while outside. The harvest fields continued their grim work. The once proud fleet of the elder races was slowly disappearing, ship by ship, converted into pure energy that filled the human vessel's storage tanks. "Sir," Linda Roberts called from communications, "we're picking up transmissions between their ships. They're begging for mercy." Hayes stood silent for a moment. "Play it on the main speaker," he finally said. "Everyone should hear this." The voices that filled the bridge were different from the arrogant tones they had heard before. These voices were filled with fear and confusion. "Please," an alien voice cried out, "our ships are alive. You're not just killing crews. You're killing the ships themselves. How can you do this? What kind of monsters are you?" "The kind you created," Hayes said quietly, though only his crew could hear him. "The kind you made when you attacked our colonies." Susan's screen suddenly lit up with new alerts. "Admiral, they're trying something desperate. 3 of their largest ships are deliberately overloading their power cores. They think a big explosion will stop us," David Wilson said from Tactical. "They don't understand yet. The 3 alien ships exploded in massive balls of light, but the harvest fields caught the energy of the explosions, drawing in even the force of the blasts. The storage tanks on the human ships surged with new power. Storage levels at 70%, Lisa Parker reported from engineering. The energy from those explosions just made us stronger." Susan watched as more data poured in. The elder races were trying everything they could think of. Some ships tried to ram the human fleet. Others tried to self-destruct. A few even tried to crash into nearby asteroids. Nothing worked. The harvest fields caught everything, turned everything into more power for the human ships. "New reading from the station," Susan announced. They're trying to separate the living parts of their ships from the non-living parts. They think that will save them." Hayes shook his head. "They still don't understand. Target those separated sections first. Show them there's no escape." The harvest fields reached out to the fragments of living crystal that the aliens had cut away from their ships. The screams started again as the material was converted to energy. The storage tanks filled faster. "Admiral," Susan said softly, looking at a new set of readings, "I'm detecting something from their station. The living crystal, it's trying to evolve. It's attempting to adapt to resist the harvesters." "Can it succeed?" Hayes asked. Susan shook her head. "No. The harvesters break down matter at the quantum level. You can't evolve to resist that. The crystal is just dying in a different way." They watched as the mighty station, pride of the elder races, began to crumble. Its attempts to adapt only made it die faster, only produced more energy for the human fleet. Storage tanks at 90%, Lisa reported. We've harvested almost their entire fleet. Susan looked at her final readings. The living crystal, the bioorganic ships, the station itself, all of it was being converted into pure energy. The elder races had spent millions of years growing and nurturing these living ships. Humanity had turned them into fuel in less than an hour. Send the data to Earth, Hayes ordered. They need to know the harvesters work even better than we hoped. As Susan prepared her report, she thought about how the elder races had called humanity children. But they had forgotten something important. Children could be cruel in ways that adults have forgotten. And humanity had never been given the chance to be anything but cruel. The harvest continued, and the stars themselves seemed to dim in fear. Captain William Foster sat at his communication station aboard the EBS Crimson Dawn, preparing the most important broadcast of his life. Around him, the bridge crew worked quietly as the harvest fields continued their grim task outside. All channels are open. Sir, he reported to Admiral Hayes. We're ready to transmit to every elder race world in range. Our quantum signal boosters will make sure they all see this. Hayes nodded slowly. Show them what we've done here. Show them everything. William's fingers moved over his control panel, activating every camera on the fleet. The images were shocking. The broken remains of the elder race's mighty fleet floating in space, the once beautiful station now half consumed by harvest fields, the storage tanks of the human ships glowing bright red with stolen energy. Adding fleet data to the transmission, William said, they'll see exactly how much power we've taken from their ships. He paused, looking up at Hayes. Should I include the screams, sir? Yes, Hayes replied. They need to understand completely. William began the broadcast. His voice was calm and clear as he spoke to the entire elder race's civilization. This message is from the Blood Harvest Fleet of Earth. You called us children. You attacked our colonies because you thought we were too young to have so much power. Now watch what children can do. The cameras showed close-ups of the harvest fields at work. They showed living crystal ships being broken down into pure energy. They showed the failed attempts to fight back, to run away, to self-destruct. And they showed how each failure only made the human fleet stronger. Your mighty fleet is gone, William continued. Your most powerful weapons only fed our harvesters. Your living ships, which you spent millions of years growing and perfecting, now power our vessels. This is what happens when you threaten humanity. On his screens, William could see the message reaching elder race worlds. He saw their reactions: shock, horror, disbelief. Some tried to block the transmission, but Earth's quantum communications broke through every barrier. Sir, Linda Roberts called from her station. We're getting responses. Thousands of them. Hayes nodded to William. Let them speak. Let everyone hear. William opened the channels. Voices filled the bridge, speaking in many alien languages, all automatically translated. This is impossible. Those ships took millions of years to grow. What kind of monsters are you? How can such a young species do this? William waited until the voices quieted, then spoke again. You thought our youth made us weak. You were wrong. Youth made us strong. Youth made us adaptable. Youth taught us that survival matters more than beauty or tradition. He pressed another button, showing new images. The harvest fields were reaching the last parts of the station now. The living crystal screamed as it died, its final attempts to adapt failing completely. We did not want this, William said. We would have been happy to learn from you, to trade with you, to grow alongside you. But you chose to attack us. You chose to treat us like children who needed to be controlled. Admiral Hayes stepped forward. Show them the colonies, he ordered quietly. William nodded and added new footage to the broadcast. Images from the attacked human colonies appeared. Burned cities, destroyed farms, dead civilians. You attacked these worlds because you thought we needed to be contained, William continued. You killed thousands of humans because you thought we were too young to have colonies. Look at your mighty fleet now. Look at your beautiful station. This is the price of underestimating Earth. The harvest fields finished their work. Where there had once been hundreds of ships and a massive station, there was now only empty space and a few pieces of non-living debris. The storage tanks of the human fleet glowed bright red with harvested energy. Remember this day, William said to the watching alien worlds. Remember what happened to those who thought humanity was weak. Remember what children can do when they're threatened. He looked at Hayes, who gave a final nod. This is your only warning, William concluded. Leave human space. Never threaten our worlds again, or we will show you why we call this the Blood Harvest Fleet. He ended the transmission and turned to Hayes. Message sent, sir. Every Elder Race world within 1,000 light years has seen what happened here. Hayes looked out at the empty space where the alien fleet had been. Good, he said quietly. Let them remember this day. Let them remember what happens when you push humanity too far. The red glow of the harvest fields finally faded, leaving only darkness and fear among the stars. Mary Reynolds stood at her control station on the bridge of the EBS Crimson Dawn, watching as hundreds of surrender signals poured in from Elder Race worlds. Her screens were filled with messages from alien leaders, each one desperate to show they meant no harm to humanity. Another transmission from their High Council, she announced. They're offering complete surrender. No conditions. Admiral Hayes walked to her station, looking at the messages. Just 6 hours ago, these same aliens had called humanity children. Now they begged for mercy like scared infants themselves. Put their council leader on the main screen, Hayes ordered. Let's hear what they have to say. The screen lit up, showing an alien face. The Elder Race leader looked old, with skin that seemed to shimmer like blue crystal. But now that ancient face showed something new. Fear. People of Earth, the alien said, its voice shaking, we surrender completely. We were wrong to attack your colonies. We were wrong about everything. Please, stop the harvest fleet. We'll give you anything you want. Hayes let the alien wait for a full minute before responding. Anything we want? He asked quietly. Can you bring back the dead from our colonies? Can you rebuild the lives you destroyed because you thought we were too young to have them? The alien leader seemed to shrink. We cannot. But we offer all our technology, all our knowledge. Millions of years of learning, all yours. Just please, don't harvest any more of our worlds. From her station, Mary watched the power readings from the fleet's storage tanks. They glowed bright red, filled with energy taken from the Elder Race fleet. Enough power to harvest 100 more worlds if they wanted to. Sir, Linda Roberts called from communications. We're getting similar offers from every Elder Race world. They're all surrendering. Hayes nodded slowly. Send them our terms. Mary began transmitting the demands that Earth had prepared. Her screen showed the reactions of the alien leaders as they read them. All Elder Race ships must stay at least 50 light years from any human world. The Elder Races must pay to rebuild the destroyed colonies. Any alien ship that enters human space will be harvested without warning. The Elder Races must acknowledge humanity's right to expand and colonize freely. They're accepting everything. Mary reported, watching the responses come in. No arguments, no conditions. But Hayes wasn't finished. He stepped to the front of the bridge and looked at the alien leader still waiting on the main screen. There's one more thing, he said. You will watch what happens next. All of you will watch, so you never forget what happens when you threaten Earth. He turned to Mary. Target the remains of their fleet base. The parts we didn't harvest. Show them what our regular weapons can do. Mary's hands moved over her controls. The human fleet's conventional weapons powered up. Missiles, energy cannons, beam weapons. They weren't as terrible as the harvesters, but they were still mighty weapons. Weapons locked on target, she reported. Fire. The fleet's weapons lit up space like new stars being born. The remaining pieces of the Elder race base, the non-living parts that the harvesters had ignored, exploded into dust. The destruction wasn't as horrible as the harvest had been, but it sent a clear message. Humanity could destroy as well as harvest. "Send the final message," Hayes ordered. Mary pressed the broadcast button one last time. Her voice was clear and strong as she spoke to every Elder race world. "Let this be your final lesson. You thought we were too young to have advanced technology. You thought we needed to be controlled. But you forgot something important. The young learn quickly, and humanity learned long ago that survival sometimes requires terrible things." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The Blood Harvest Fleet returns to Earth now. We leave you in peace, but remember what happened here. Remember what we can do. Remember that every ship in our fleet still has empty storage tanks, waiting to be filled." The alien leader on the screen bowed its head. "We understand," it whispered. "We will remember." Mary closed the transmission and turned to Hayes. "It's done, sir. They'll never threaten us again." Hayes looked out at the stars. "No," he said quietly. "They won't, because now they know what children can become when you force them to grow up too fast." The fleet turned toward Earth, leaving behind a changed galaxy. The Elder races had learned their lesson. Sometimes the youngest species could be the most dangerous of all. 1 month after the battle, Admiral Robert Hayes stood in the observation deck of the EBS Crimson Dawn, watching Earth grow larger in the viewport. The blue-green planet looked peaceful from space, giving no hint of the terrible weapons its people had created. "Final approach vectors coming in," Paul Cooper's voice said through the comm system. "We'll be docking at the lunar base in 2 hours." Hayes nodded, though no one could see him. The entire fleet was returning home, their storage tanks still glowing with harvested energy. That power would feed Earth's cities for years to come. A terrible gift from the Elder races who had thought humanity too young to exist among the stars. The door behind him opened. Lisa Parker, the chief engineer, walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Hayes. "Can't sleep either?" she asked, standing beside him at the window. "No," Hayes replied. "Keep thinking about what we did out there. What we proved we could do." Lisa sipped her coffee slowly. The news from the colonies came in. They're already starting to rebuild. The Elder races are keeping their word, sending materials, helping with construction. They're terrified of making us angry again. "Good," Hayes said. "Fear will keep them honest. Fear will keep our people safe." They stood in silence for a while, watching Earth grow closer. Finally, Lisa spoke again. "The science team finished analyzing the harvest data. What we did, it changed everything. No species in known space has technology like the harvesters. We're not just feared now, we're a superpower." Hayes turned to look at her. "And what do you think about that?" Lisa's hands tightened around her coffee cup. "I helped build the harvesters. Spent 10 years of my life working on them. Never thought we'd actually use them. Never thought we'd need to." She paused. "But they killed our people. They thought being old gave them the right to decide who lives and who dies among the stars. And now they know better," Hayes said quietly. The comm system crackled again. This time it was Susan Chen, the xenobiologist. "Admiral, you should see this," putting it on your observation deck screen. The large screen on the wall lit up, showing news feeds from across the galaxy. The Elder races were changing their entire society. Their mighty warships were being dismantled. Their military bases were being converted to peaceful uses, and everywhere they were building monuments. Not to their own glory, but as warnings. "They're calling it the Crimson Dawn Incident," Susan explained. "Every young spacefaring race is being told the story, not as a threat, but as a lesson. Never judge a species by its age." Hayes watched the feeds with interest. The monuments showed scenes from the battle, human ships deploying harvest fields, Elder race vessels being converted to energy, the mighty station falling. but they weren't aimed at glorifying Earth's victory. They were meant to remind everyone of the price of arrogance. Another transmission coming in. Linda Roberts announced from the bridge. It's from the Elder Race Council. Put it through, Hayes ordered. The council leader's face appeared on screen. The fear was still there in its ancient eyes, but there was something else too. Respect. Admiral Hayes, the alien said, "We send this message to inform you that all reparations to your colonies are proceeding as agreed, and we wish to share something with you. Our scholars have found references in our oldest records to another young species, long ago, who developed similar technology to your harvesters. They were called the Destroyers. All records of what happened to them were erased." "Are you trying to warn us?" Hayes asked. The alien shook its head. "No. We are trying to understand. Perhaps being young is not a weakness. Perhaps it is we who have grown too old, too set in our ways. Perhaps the galaxy needs the fire of young species to prevent stagnation." After the transmission ended, Hayes and Lisa stood in silence again, watching Earth fill more of the viewport. "What do you think happens now?" Lisa finally asked. Hayes thought about the colonies being rebuilt, about the elder races learning their lesson, about the harvest technology that had changed the balance of power in the galaxy. "Now we do what humanity has always done," he said. "We survive. We grow stronger, and we make sure no one ever forgets what happens when they threaten our people." The Blood Harvest fleet came home that day, returning to a changed Earth and a changed galaxy. They had gone out as defenders and returned as legends. And in the dark between the stars, the story of humanity's terrible vengeance became a warning to all. Sometimes the youngest species are the ones you should fear most, for they still remember what the ancient ones have forgotten. That survival often requires becoming the very thing your enemies fear.